Welcome to the Team Engagement Podcast, where leaders of teams share their insights. We discuss 6 questions in 9 minutes because leaders know how to be concise. We'll jump right to it with our guest today. First question, in a few sentences, tell us who you are and what you do.
Well, hello, my friend, and to everybody out there in podcast land. My name is Rob Teschner. My flying call sign was Cujo. That's how people know me. I spent a lot of my time teaching folks by way of keynotes, by writing. I'm working on my second book right now, but the preponderance of my time is focused on teaching high performance teamwork to organizations and specifically their teams that care to up their game a bit, leveraging my background in fighter aviation to the good of the organization.
Well, thank you. And I'm excited to hear what you had to share because of your background. And by the way, thank you again. We talked a little bit before we got the recording going in, but I wanted to put it on the air, so to speak, that we appreciate your service to our country as well. Well, question number 2, what's the best thing about working with a team?
There's so much goodness to it. In fact, you recognize that you miss it when you don't have the full team with you any longer, kind of like what life is like in retirement. But if I were to boil it all down to the most important part, I'd say it's being held accountable for doing what it is that we've all signed up to do. And we can try to make it happen as an individual, and you can be accountable to yourself. You ought to be accountable to yourself. You want to be accountable to yourself. But when you're on a team, one of the best things is you got teammates whose one of their partial roles is to make sure that we're all continuing on the path towards team purpose. And that involves us making sure that everybody's doing their part the right way so that we can achieve the goal of excellence. And when we don't have that in lockstep, when it's a little bit unbalanced, the team doesn't perform as well as it ought to.
Great points. Well, question number 3, I hear from other leaders of teams that it can be a challenge to get team members engaged. Tell us your thoughts.
It's a challenge for sure if we're not clear on our purpose. If you look back on, the world of high performance and being in a fighter squadron, we were very clear on what our purpose was. Every day was centered around achieving mission objectives. Every day was centered on improving how it was that we achieved mission objectives. It was easy to get fired up about coming to work. I think sometimes if we in business don't share a commitment to a common purpose, something that we actually own, then it becomes more a job where I collect pay and benefits and I wait to get out of here because I want to do something that's more exciting to me someplace else. That's where we lose it. So spending time to be intentional about figuring out our shared purpose, that's the win.
That's a great comment about having that focus on a shared purpose. And I really like that. That's a great comment. Question number 4, what other piece of advice would you share with leaders of teams?
Look, I don't know, and I speak now from the standpoint of having worked with teams for a few years post-Air Force. I don't know that we spend as leaders, as CEOs, C-suite, key management members and whatnot, enough time understanding what teamwork actually is. And there's a science behind why it is that teams work. And there's a science behind how it is that we get teammates who are, at the end of the day, human beings, to bring their best to work so that we can achieve our shared objectives. And I think if we're a little bit more intentional about understanding teams, we could unlock the full capability of our teams. One recommendation would be to read a book called The Wisdom of Teams. 2 researchers, Katzenbach and Smith, that spent a couple of decades studying why do teams work. They boil it down to 5 components: having the right size, having the right skills, but then shared commitment to a common purpose, to performance goals, and to an approach for which we're mutually accountable. Now we start getting into there's something more to this thing than just wearing the same hat, being in the same cubicle space, going out for lunch together. I think that's the first part. I think the other part is really embracing how it is that we are intentional about building accountability where there's no blame or shame, where the outcome is motivation to bring our best to work tomorrow, even after we fail today. And too often, nobody teaches us how do we practice accountability well. So it's an onerous task. The idea that we have about accountability is that somebody's going to be hurt. And so therefore we fear it. Because we fear it, we don't practice it so well. Because we don't practice it so well, people aren't held to the right standard. And as such, team performance suffers. And so I think if I was coming at team leadership brand new, I'd focus on what is a team, and I'd focus on how to practice accountability the right way to get the most from my teammates to help us achieve our common purpose.
Well, those are such great comments, and you've used a word several times now in our discussion that I really like as well, and that's the word intentional, about really being focused on that and making sure we're making great progress. Such great comments. Thank you.
Of
Question,
course.
question number 5. What other successful leaders of teams, such as yourself, would you like to recognize that have had a positive influence in your life?
Yeah, there's, how about we go with 3? We've got General Todd Walters, call sign Magoo. He's now the commander, Supreme Allied Headquarters Europe. His leadership style back when he was a colonel, so kind of C-suite in my previous life, was one that was so inspirational. You could come back after a mission, have completely failed everything, and yet he found a way to inspire you to want to come back and give it another shot the next day, and you had confidence that you could do better. It's great to see him in that position. General Jeff Harigian, call sign Cobra, who runs U.S. Air Force's Europe, same basic approach. These are people that had a profound impact on me when I was a young pup, learning how to fly F-15s. And the final person who I had named, who I think would be a fantastic addition to your podcast lineup, my friend, would be Colonel Lee Ellis. He was a prisoner of war in Vietnam for about 5.5 years. He was the youngest prisoner amongst a certain cadre there. And he's been focused on leadership development now for about 30 years. The work that he does to help us unpack what our natural leadership styles are and how that affects how it is that we lead teams is brilliant. And he'd be somebody that I would want to introduce you to. In fact, I will introduce you to.
I would appreciate that. And thank you for recognizing all 3 of those good people. I have such admiration, especially for that last one, who was a prisoner of war. My goodness. So that would be, oh yeah, what a story that would be, I'm sure. But
yes.
Thank you for recognizing them in a small way, sharing some of how they've influenced you. Last question, tell us about your first job.
First job was one of my favorites of all time. As a 14-year-old, coming to visit my cousins in St. Louis for the summer, I took a job at Chick-fil-A at the Chesterfield Mall just outside of downtown St. Louis. And oh my gosh, it was brilliant. We could have as much as we could eat during our 10-minute breaks, which we had, I think, 2 per typical session. And so I used to, based upon a crazy metabolism, have 2 sandwiches, something like 30 chicken nuggets, a gigantic Coke, and would still be looking forward to the next break. But what made it so awesome was that the environment that we worked in was so phenomenal. Our team leads were uniformly outstanding, and we always had throughput. People were always coming through, so we were always active. And because we were selling a product that we all believed in, it was fun to work there. And I think if we can cross-apply the experience of being a low-level employee at Chick-fil-A into any of our places of work, where we believe in the product, the leadership cares, it becomes fun to work there. Now we unleash the full potential of our teams, and we do even better.
You've gone really well on that full circle about talking at the beginning. We're talking about purpose and that kind of that alignment there, and how you learned that at an early age. So I love that. Thank you. Cujo, thank you so much for joining us on our podcast today. How can people find you?
Very easy. Our website is www.vmaxgroupllc, VMaxGrouplLC.com. And you can book a consultation there. We can talk about how it is that we help teams achieve high performance.
Fantastic. This is Sean Richards with the Team Engagement Podcast, where leaders of teams share their insights. For more ideas, you can find us on LinkedIn by searching Blue Sky Business Consulting. Thanks so much for joining us, and have a great day.